All right, make sure you got the reading out.
Oh, it's
Get out the Nicholas Cook article.
Schenkerian.
Schenkerian analysis. This is chapter 2 of the book, A Guide to Musical Analysis. Okay, so he says the most important thing to do before you get started with this whole Schenkerian enterprise is to make sure you know what question you're trying to answer. So what's Schenkerian analysis supposed to answer? What's his problem that it's figuring out?
How is the motion going toward a goal? How is the motion moving? Relieving.
Let's put aims. Now let's see. What are you up to? Why do it? Well, it's showing you motion toward a goal. Yeah, good. What are the aims of Schenkerian analysis? He says something else on page 28 to kick it off. What's he saying?
It aims to omit inessentials and to highlight important relationships.
Which is true too, because you've got to get at the main gist of a melody, where it's going, you've got to know what's essential and what's not essential for that motion. You have to make distinctions. You have to decide what's elaborating and what's stable.
It's most important.
I do want to quibble a little bit with his wording there. You could easily misread this. Listen to it again. You want to omit inessentials to highlight important relationships. Well, what's one of the first things to go? Remember that Schubert we were just looking at? La-dee-dum, la-da-dum. And Trevor, you're going to say, wait a minute, you just lost my favorite notes right there. Right? What's he omitting? Isn't he omitting the essentials? Okay, so help me out here. What's Schenker really doing? Is he omitting the inessentials for that piece? Is that what he's doing?
He's just highlighting the most important structure or motion or notes.
Okay. Remember last time we talked about the structure of this building and how you want it to be, you want integrity in the structure of these walls, in the way the roof is held up. You know, you want that. But that's not what makes a building really beautiful either, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff that makes a place livable are things like curtains around the windows, pictures on the walls, stuff that isn't essential to the building staying upright, but makes the building what it is. Now there is something about the shape of it too, and it's when you're talking about architecture, so it breaks down a little bit there. But I don't want to say that our goal, when we take away those suspensions in the Schubert, omit what we call, we don't want to say if we omit those suspensions, we've just omitted the inessential stuff. You know, just whatever, it's not important. No, those notes are very important. In fact, they're essential to the piece being what it is, right? You need them or else the piece wouldn't be what it is. But what you're doing is you're relating that stuff using a middle ground level to stuff that you're going to find in a lot of different pieces. You're going to put the stable, normative stuff up here and then show how this piece plays with that stuff, plays with the stable thing, and by holding on to a stable note makes it unstable and then resolves it. So you've got levels. You're not trying to omit stuff to be left with the good stuff. No. You're trying to see how the stuff, the materials of the piece, relate back to other things that are important for the structural integrity of the piece. You see the difference there? So it would be a misnomer to, like somebody said, I can't remember who this is from, but Schenker always eliminates all the notes that I care most about. Well, yeah, he eliminates them in a sense, but what he's trying to do is show them at the foreground. Don't omit them, but then show how they relate to other notes. So, just because they don't show up in the middle ground doesn't mean they're not important. In fact, you're saying the further back you go, the less important they are, the less import they have for that particular piece. Because you're going to find them in all sorts of pieces. How many pieces are going to have 5 lines? A lot, right? And just because those look the same piece to piece doesn't mean anything about the piece. When you're analyzing the piece, you're relating the notes of the piece back to that. That becomes the backdrop. The 5 line is the backdrop. That's what it would have been if it were a little kid's, twinkle, twinkle, little star kind of level. Really simple. But this melody is not simple. It's more ornate and it's beautiful. And you appreciate that against the backdrop of what would have been really normal and simple and very stable. There's no plot. A plot needs some twists and turns, right? Some tension. And so you can have Boy Meets Girl as your background, but it's how you delay them getting together, and there are particular ways that make that story the story that it is, right? So just because the plot is similar to other plots at some background level doesn't mean anything. And just because you can say, oh, this is just Boy Meets Girl. Well, yeah, but tell me how it works, How did it play out? And how did they get together at the end? You want to know all the twists and turns. So sometimes it's good to know sort of the cliches of a genre, a detective story. You kind of want to be able to know what would be normal, and then you can really get how the new James Bond movie plays with some of those patterns that were in a lot of other James Bond movies. You appreciate that James Bond movie, the newest one, because you go, oh yeah, I see. They're playing with this little theme that runs through a bunch of these James Bond movies. So it's not that it's there, but it's what they do with it. Yeah, I've got scale degree 3, but I'm keeping that scale degree 3 and making a suspension. That's what I'm really interested in. And just knowing what it could have done. Remember how we were looking at how those lines could have just done something really normal and simple, but how Schubert took an inner voice and put it up above? That's the kind of thing we're really interested. That's what we want to highlight at the foreground. Show how these neat things arise from what could have just been simple. So in a way, we can use the middle ground as a gauge and say, it could have been like this, but he didn't do that. This is what he really did. So it's about relationships between levels. It's not about, okay, that's the piece, but oh, guess what? It goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at this level. That's not exciting. It's not that. It's not that you eliminate all this stuff to get at the really good stuff. No. You know what the backdrop is, not because that's something special. You prune it back to that just so that you can build it back up again and say, see how it grew? It grew into this. This is what the piece is. And I can appreciate it because I know how it might have been. But that's not what this composer did. He or she did this, and I can appreciate what's special about it. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
Don't misread that.
I was just thinking of like a Christmas tree. It's like the foundation. You have your base, your foundation, but it's like,
That's a good analogy.
it's like kind of plain. You have your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But once you add the ornaments and all the visual stuff.
Yeah, you got your tree. They're all sort of similar in their ways, right?
Yeah.
And then what makes it your Christmas tree is that you got this ornament that Grandma gave you way back when, and you go, oh, this beauty, I'm putting that up there. I'm going to put it right here so everybody can see it. And that's your tree because you got your own ornaments.
Yeah.
One guy's got their white lights, and then you've got your multicolored, and it's your tree. So we're interested in, the ornaments on there, not the tree that is the same across the board pretty much.
Yeah.
Although, I might have picked a better tree than you.
More
More symmetrical, But no, basically they're the same, right? They're trees.
Yeah, like, they vary in color, so we have like, you vary in your time, like periods, but then it's still all trees. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like music, it's still all like toward a common goal, which is the cadence.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Cadence, that's good. Gotta put that up there too. Okay, now what's he say about He said some things about progression right off. They're pretty good.
Linear unfolding of the triad.
That comes a little later, let's get that
Oh,
up there
sorry.
too. Okay, so you're saying linear, the piece is a linear unfolding.
Like, ties back to embellishments and ornaments because it's our vegetation.
Yeah, that's right.
Stepwise.
So the triad is the tree and all the rest. Yeah, okay, that's good. I'm sure we're going up with that one there. We're going somewhere. Anstieg. Okay, so, what about progression? He talks about that a little bit.
It's a larger motion toward a future harmonic goal.
Motion to our future harmonic goal, yeah, that's true.
It's
Motion,
cadence, so
goal,
it's all the same
cadence.
thing.
Yeah, didn't he say somewhere that the whole piece is like a big cadence? You know, it's big progression played out over time? He said something like that, didn't he?
Yeah, because he uses lots of inversions with the chords.
But an expansion of
Yeah,
the
he
opening time.
expands a lot
Yes.
each chord.
Yeah,
It's like if you do a hypermeter, you can see para pa pa, you know, para or something like that. But
Well,
you
so that
can
way listen and see
you
what-
can really feel like how the harmony just keeps going.
Mhm.
There is lots of prolongation, harmony prolongation.
Yeah. When we get to the Bach, we'll be able to flesh that out, that idea of what's being prolonged and where and how long and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So hang on to that. Abby, you were gonna say something.
I was just trying to figure out what you're looking for.
Well, let's just step through and see. Are there some spots where you can see some ideas that are really key ideas here?
He says that about it's a metaphor according to which composition is seen as a large-scale embellishment of a simple underlying harmonic progression, or even as a massive.
Hold on with that.
Okay.
Large-scale embellishment.
Embellishment of a simple underlying harmonic progression.
Simple underlying. That's the one. Thank you. That's cool. So he says it's kind of like a basic progression, and it's that progression becomes underlying because it's embellished. And you're viewing the whole piece as that. A big, fat progression. Yeah, that's cool. And then the next thing?
Says, or even as a massively expanded cadence. 36.
Yeah, those are good. It's a neat way to look at it. You're just taking a basic progression, 151, and you find out how to flesh that out and elaborate upon it. Good. All right, he starts to talk through the piece. He starts with calls it a Roman letter, Roman numeral analysis. And he says that doesn't quite do the job. Why not? What's wrong with the Roman numeral analysis? What does it lack in his mind?
Doesn't it show how the melody relates to the harmony?
Yeah, that's true. There's some other things he says right off the bat too. Do you see some other things? Look on page like 32, 33 in there. He talks, in italics, there's some words there. Return. Expansion. Enclosed harmonic circuit. Those are some words that I thought were evocative. So he's got these ideas of, there's departure and return. You can see the idea of return getting highlighted because he puts that in italics on page 33. He also talks about expansion down at the bottom of that page. Expansion of the opening tonic itself. Talks about a closed harmonic circuit, so it's kind of like you come right back. You start on it and come back to it. Now, these ideas that he's talking about here, departure, return, and expansion, we've talked about those. Do you recognize them? I go to Japan. I come back. Departure and return.
What about the
progression.
interruptions?
Say
The
again.
interruption that we have a cadence that's
Like
interrupted.
embedded,
Are you talking about that? And then
embedded progression. So like it,
No, I don't think so.
So he's talking about the opening as being expansion, but there is a
Yeah.
progression there, right? Let's get it. Look at the score real quick. That's on the previous couple pages. One, actually he's giving us the chords as well, but I'm gonna just get them from the score direct. Okay, those are the opening 4 chords. Talk to me. Go ahead. You're saying Genevieve. Talk to me about this here. How is
Yeah.
this expansion a closed harmonic circuit?
because it's, so you're on figure 8, right?
I'm not there, but can you talk to me about this?
Okay, that's a harmonic progression. So you have your tonic predominant, like it's leading.
Inversions.
And
Change the whole meaning of it.
It's weaker, it's not strong.
It's
and it's embedded because that's,
You
it
mentioned
is,
embedded.
it's not really a closure statement.
Mhm. Can you do this and show this as embellishing motion?
Yes.
What's the bass do?
Especially because in the 2 chords, I see the pedal so.
So we could write paddle here, and what would we write here for the 5-6-5? How's it embellishing?
Neighbor.
neighbor.
Yes. Okay, so we've dealt with this idea of closed harmonic circuit. You know,
It's spinning.
you're not really getting outside of the orbit of your one, you're just there. Well, yeah, that's the spinning wheels, right? You're moving, but it's just your tires. Because you don't get traction. He's gonna say, when he's talking about the opening progression, that just a straight up Roman numeral analysis doesn't really help you. To know that the Roman numerals are 1, 2, 5, 1 doesn't capture everything that a Schenkerian approach will. The Schenkerian approach will show you that there are differences between really significant departures, going somewhere and getting back, and just staying within the orbit of that tonic, not ever really getting away and back again. So you see that contrast there?
Yeah.
We're familiar with it. Is it embedded? Or is it really getting you closure? There's a big difference between these two. So that's a significant idea, and he's doing it in different words, but we get it. We've experienced this. We
Yeah.
talked about this
So,
effect.
Dr. Pari, what is the difference between expansion and prolongation? Tonic expansion,
That-
tonic prolongation?
Same thing.
It's the same.
Mhm. Yes, prolongation. So you expand
Yeah.
on a topic, a tonic, and you stretch it out over time.
Yeah.
And like in speech, expand on that thought, you know, so you elaborate on it.
Oh, yeah.
You prolong it, you stretch it out over time. Now, it's not literally there the
Yeah.
whole time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's
But it
being
just-
elaborated
Uh-huh.
within that span. And so that's prolongation, present even in its absence, right?
Mhm.
Even though it's not literally here,
Yeah.
we can still see how it's
How it-
active.
It's active, it's still there.
That function is still at play. You haven't really left it.
Yeah.
That's
What is-
prolongation.
What is diminution? I never did really,
Diminution
in this
says,
context.
well, in the old sense, you got this big note value, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna do something fancier to replace that. It might just be a neighboring, instead of holding this note out, you do da, da, da. Diminution, in this sense, is taking a long value and elaborating on it, creating smaller note values to replace the big one, but they have to be such that they could stand in for that big one, not just random, but they have to.
But
fit
it's
the
not just
context.
speaking rhythmically, or is it?
Right, it's the art of diminution is basically a step in improvisation. So in the Renaissance, you're an instrumentalist, you play the melody, but you don't play it straight. You add notes to it. You base your melody off of the original, but you elaborate on it, and that's the art of diminution.
You play
embellish.
small note values.
Right, right.
But it's not, I mean, it's not referring to harmony specifically or anything. It's just mostly rhythmic idea.
Well, that's true. But not just purely rhythmic, because you have to understand what kinds of patterns will work. Neighboring patterns, passing, incomplete neighboring. You know, you need some repertoire of kinds of motion that go with it too. Not just ta ta ta, you know, but there's got to be something more to it than that, where it gets a little dull. Okay, so the Roman numeral analysis is not quite adequate to capturing all these nuances of spinning your wheels versus advancing the progression. It doesn't capture the difference between prolongation and progression. I'm just going to put these words up here so that we've got what we've been using. Are you advancing a harmonic progression, or are you just prolonging a single entity within the progression? There's a big difference between those two, and he's really touching on that here, but in other words, using other terminology for it.
So return is cadence.
Because you've gotten away, you've run to the dominant, and now you're getting back to your tonic at a cadence. Look at page 34. It says, at the very top, each of these sections has a single overall harmonic function with the sole exception of bars 23. Harmonically, the entire evolution of the piece, from its beginning, which lasts up to bar 19, to its end, which begins at bar 24, lies in these 4 bars. So he's saying that there is one place in this piece where you really have progression, and it's just in these short few measures. You see his figure 10 below? He's saying you got 1, and then in measure 20 through 24, you're going predominant to dominant using our terminology. 4, 7 to 5. What's he saying here? He's finding the elements of the phrase model, isn't he?
Yeah.
In our terms, we would say this is the predominant, here's the dominant, here's the tonic. This is the phrase model, harmonic function in action. And he's saying that's really, that action of bringing closure, 4, 5, 1, happens in pretty quick succession from measure 20 to 35. Pretty speedy. And so the rest, that's the progression, so the rest has to be some kind of prolongation going on.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now he wants to show 4, 7 going to 5, but there's a problem with his basic progression here. To reduce it down to this doesn't quite make sense, because if you do this, you'll get parallel fifths in between these two, and I think that's why, if you look at your graph, this is a bigger version of what he reproduced in there. And since I have the book, I went to the original and photocopied it for you so that it can be a little larger. It's hard to read in the article, but here you can really see it. You have to put them side by side. You see the big picture here. Look in measure 20. Actually, it's 21, isn't it? 21 is where you get the 4, 7.
Yeah.
But Schenker doesn't just go 4 to 5. You see the parallels that would occur there? Soprano and tenor, so to speak, would have parallel fifths. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Measure 21.
E flat, A flat.
Now, they're, you got, this is a C major, right? So in measure 21, you've got A to E, a perfect fifth. If you just omitted what comes in between and jumped directly to measure 24, you would have a G to D fifth in succession. You see the parallel fifths there? You with me?
Yeah.
That would be parallel fifths if you just do what he said. Just drop the intervening measures and just go direct. 4 to 5, 4, 7 to 5. Now you can see why Schenker, even way back, see the middle ground? He's still got 4 to 5. He never shows 4 going to 5. because he's worried about voice leading. He's worried about counterpoint too. So there's no way he's going to show 4 to 5. He's going to show 4 to 5 in there instead.
He's not gonna show 4-2-5, he's gonna show 4-2.
Yes. What I've said up to now, look under his section 2. He says, what I have shown up to now is not a Schenkerian analysis, simply an attempt to answer the question, how are the progressions directed toward a goal? And using this pattern, he's trying to capture that. Moving toward a goal and others as tonally enclosed. Follow him? He's making this distinction. Tonally enclosed. You're not really escaping the orbit, so to speak, of the tonic. He's after that idea again. He's just re-articulating what he had said. Last sentence on that page. I'm on page 34. Schenkerian analysis is a technique for answering the same question in a much more specific and clearly demonstrable way, and which is particularly designed to show the special importance that large-scale linear formations. What's he mean? Linear formations? You know what that is? What's he talking about? It means melodic.
Melody.
Yes,
Melody.
good. Melody, stepwise connections, that kind of thing. So it's particularly designed to show the special importance that large-scale linear formations have in the creation of directed motion toward harmonic goals. So it's really set up to go beyond writing a series of Roman numerals in a row and saying that's really the harmonic action, and it shows the melody lines that participate and how they move to harmonic goals. So the goal is to get to tonic. One, it is harmonic, but it shows you how you get there through showing all these melodic lines, their activity. So he's right on. This is very good. Listen to a couple other things. Apart from these main chords, everything in the piece is to be explained in terms of motion of contrapuntal lines. This is further down in that same paragraph. Now he's got the word counterpoint showing up. So it's not just harmonic stuff, although he's making the point that there are goals that are harmonic. He's interested in linear, melodic activity that gets you there. And he's also interested in the counterpoint between the two. We've talked about that, haven't we? Counterpoint. Okay, let's look at some of the things that he finds. Oh yeah, page 36 is where you're finding the massively expanded cadence quote.
Yeah.
That's right, good. Let's take a look at what Schenker does. So get this out, his sketch of this whole piece, this prelude. What kinds of things do you see? Can you show me where there's a... We know where the progression is going to be. We see the 4, 2, 5, and then the 1. At that lowest level, you can see what he thinks the main progression is. But can you tell me, can you identify a place where we can see expansion or prolongation going on? Motion within a closed circuit of tonic, say? Or the dominant or something else?
The first 20 measures.
Yes.
the first 20 measures.
First 20 measures before we get to that 4 where the progression to predominance begins. Yeah, okay, so how does that show up in the score, in his graph of the score? How do you know that you're right back where you started and that this is, yes, say that loud.
Line.
Yeah, that's right. The dash slur shows that you're just getting what you had before coming back again. But there's a difference. You're down an octave from where you started. Okay, so you've retained that E flat and you've elaborated it. How did it get elaborated? Can you break it down into some steps? Just focus on the melody for now. Oh, we could look at the bass too, right? Because the C at the beginning, first bass note, comes back in measure 20. Or what is that, measure 16, 17, 18? Measure 19. In measure 19, you get the C again, but an octave
Octave
lower.
lower.
Okay, so we're supposed to be able to see some sort of linear motion that gets us back to that C. How does it work?
It's basically stepwise,
Mm-hmm.
with some
step
little
wise.
embellishments, but
That's good.
Some suspension.
Why does it in measure 10 go away from the stepwise motion? Because I see the A moving down to a G, but there's a D with a, it looks like an eighth note there. Why did Bach go down for that D?
To make it more interesting.
Okay,
Like
so it's not all linear. That
It's
could
a
be.
secondary dominant. No,
Ah,
right?
yes, it is.
To 5.
So
That's
he's
why.
gonna highlight the dominant's
Yeah.
arrival
Uh-huh.
by tonicizing.
Mhm.
Okay, so when he gets to his final goal, so this is a way station. He's getting to the dominant, and now he's gonna get back to tonic. How does he mark his return? See a similarity?
oh yeah, it's
What?
the same thing.
Same thing.
Mhm.
See the G to C at the
In
very
measure
end?
18, or is it, yeah, measure 18.
I think it's 19, actually, but yeah, at the end of that first page, right?
Yes,
Yeah, there's, oh, you're right, for the G, you mean.
yeah, yes.
Right on, yeah, the G's right. Again, he's going 5-1 to mark the arrival, and you've finally gotten that, down that octave, 5-1. Okay, so he's broken down this motion, now I'm talking about Schenker. He's showing that you get back to C, but he's breaking it down with 2 slurs, see that?
Mhm.
2 slurs below, 2 slurs above, and it shows the dominant as a way station, a place to stop before you go all the rest of the distance down the octave. And he's interested in this very stepwise line, even though melodically, as well as harmonically, there are departures. Look in measure 5, you see that A? There's an A up high, but he's showing that, well, the E does continue as a voice there in the right register, and then you move to the D, but there's a G up top. So there's some departures that he's going to highlight with his big open note heads, the descent, the stepwise line going down. And so at a middle ground level, do you see his harmonic analysis down below? M to G shows the middle ground. You've got 1 for the whole business, and then foreground shows 1, 2, 5, 1, more detail. He didn't have the idea of secondary dominant, so he's not going to do that. He'll use 2 for it, a major 2 for 5 and 5. Okay, now we get the progression that we were talking about, the 2 predominant chords with a crazy chord in between. He's calling that a chromatic passing motion, Durchgang, passing through it. That's what the DG is up above. Do you see that chromatic? Durchgang, DG, up above, that's in measure 22. He puts that in parentheses, showing that he doesn't think it's quite as important as the rest of it. It's part of the motion 2-5, yes, but he sees the 2 main chords as being the more diatonic ones. The diatonic chords there. Now I know that there's an A flat in the 2, but he's highlighting those other 2 notes and thinking of that as passing motion, F sharp G. But the 2 is important, voice leading, as we've talked about. Now, what happens starting in measure 24 that you can see in the score?
There is a 5. It's
5.
prolongation.
Yes.
5 is called prolongation.
Below the score you see 5 with a big line after it, showing the prolongation of 5. Yes. There's so much, there's so much tension there, it's great. Do you see this, the symbol goes like this? Like this, starting at the beginning of that 5 and going quite a ways through it, actually to the very end of it. He's saying that the D looks like a main note, stem up, but it really belongs as an inner voice to this other note. And so it's really 4 going to 3. He's saying that this is the main note. The second of those two notes connected by that weird beam, the jagged beam, you know what I'm talking about? You see it in
Yeah.
Yeah, that shows that 4 to him is actually the main part, and it's finding resolution at the chord change.
Is it always the second of those two notes whenever those are?
No, it's the higher of the two that has prominence, but it kind of, what it does is it tucks it away. It says this looks like, because of the stem, it looks like it's an upper part, but it's actually, this is called an unfolding. You've taken two notes that should have been together, if it weren't spread out over time, and it's separated them, but they should have been, in a sense, if you sort of, if you put it all back in the box, they'll be together.
Is it always the higher note? Or
I
does
think
it
you
just
can,
matter?
you can say that the higher note is the main one, but I could probably find an example where he would want to highlight something else.
Okay.
But generally, yes. But that's unfolding. It's like you've unpacked a chord. Now he does it again over the 1. You see that? The E, he's saying, is in turn an inner voice for a C that comes later. Now this is really, really wild. So he's interested in counterpoint, so you'd think, well, that's the end right there. 1 appears, and you've got scale degree 2 at top. But he says, no, there's still some melodic activity to be done. 1 comes late. Now that doesn't sound controversial, but if you say that the 2 comes in the penultimate measure, in measure 34, 2 does not have any support there in terms of the bass. The bass note is literally a C still, and he's showing scale degree 2 showing up over it. You see? So there's a weird thing going on here where he's saying the melodic motion 2-1 happens late, once the tonic has already appeared in the bass. But the harmonic motion to 1 happens earlier. Isn't that crazy? So he's willing to let things happen in the score the way they actually occur, the way he hears them, and not be tied into making scale degree 2 happen with the 5. And that is really remarkable to me, because usually you come up with your theory and you make everything fit it, you know. You squeeze it into your box, you make it do what you said it's going to do, and he just doesn't do it. He lets the melodic closure come over here, and the harmonic closure come earlier. It's wild,
That's
isn't
why
it?
he's so great.
Yeah, that's why we love him, right? Yeah. That's why theorists pull out their hair, but that's why we love him, right? Because he is willing to
Oh.
reflect how he hears it,
Mhm.
and then try and back it up with good arguments. Okay, so this is his slurs connect main notes. So he's saying 1 to 5, 5 to 1. But in the end, the dashed line shows that you've just retained the original thing. So that means oral retention. You've kept something from before. Yeah, you've put it in a new register, but it's essentially the same. That's what the dash thing says. It's so much the same that I don't even want to show it as two separate things connected. I'm going to show it as the same thing coming back. That's what that means for him.
What's that German phrase there?
Couplung, that means he's coupled, he's connected two different registers. C in one register and C an octave lower. Octave coupling. He's joined, Bach has joined two registers by stepwise motion. And the same up above. And then coupling upwards, at the end you can see from 24, measure 24 in the top part, there's another instance where he's saying, here's my scale degree 2, which is entered over the dominant coming back. But I hear the second one is more significant because it's in the right register. That's really interesting that he's so sensitive to register. He's willing to sort of do the theoretically untidy thing just to show that that too is the second of those two scale degree 2s is the one that he's gonna stem. See what I'm saying? He did not stem the D in measure 24. He thinks of that as an inner voice. And the main two comes at the very end when we were highlighting a minute ago. That's interesting. But it helps him, in a sense, to have this idea of obligatory register. Like if you open up a particular register, if you want to have everything closed, you have to return to it and bring closure there. That doesn't always work out that way, but a lot of times it does. The opening register, ultimate closure happens in that same register. And he captures that idea with this obligatory register. You feel obliged to return to the same register to close everything out. Okay. Any questions about this? Oh, we didn't even talk about them. See the urzats? 3, 2, 1 at the background. 1, 5, 1. And then elaborate that. Add the predominant chords in there. Show some of the nuances of how 1 enters the bass note, scale degree 1 enters early and closure comes later. And then foreground, elaborate that with a bunch of passing motion and what's called unfolding. And it already shows the unfolding, the middle ground. Unfolding is, again, two things that should have been harmonically simultaneous, and you unfold it in time, play it out over time.
Is it sometimes 3-2, 3-2-1, and then sometimes 3-2-1, or is it always going to be, you can see the fundamental line over the whole thing?
He'll sometimes show the interruption at the background, but that's not the urzats. If he put the urzats up there as yet another layer, then you would see 3, let me do it this way so it's the way you would read it. 3, skip the interruption, 2, 1.
Right, okay.
But at some level it's interrupted, and then that causes all sorts of other things to fall out from that.
Okay.
Dr. Pari, Urline and urzats are the same, right?
No.
Urzats is the combination, go ahead, say it.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The urzats is the line and the basser.
Both together.
So the fundamental line is.
Urline is just the fundamental line.
Say urlini.
Urline,
Yeah,
yeah.
urlini.
Yeah.
Yeah, urlini plus Bassbrecher, or in English you say the fundamental line and the bass arpeggiation together form the fundamental structure, urzats.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, before we go, since we got a minute, let's listen to a recording and tell me, well, let's just take a minute. How would you perform this? Actually, I'm just going to play the chords. I did that very neutral. How should I shape it? How would you shape it? Dynamically, would you do anything?
Climax of 5, probably.
Go to the 5. Okay, so I'll do a little more intense and then resolve. Yeah, you could do that. Then you're going to move. Once you've established your tonic, then the bass starts to move down. And then we settle on the 5 as a halfway point. That's measure 11. Listen to what they do to acknowledge that spot. Do you hear that as an arrival on the way to somewhere else, or do they just kind of blow through it? Then we're going to start moving again, down by step, all the way to 18. Listen for some way to... Wait, we don't go to 18, we go to 19, where we get back on the tonic. Listen for how that's performed. Is there a sense where is there this continuity where you keep the dynamic level subtly increasing and then maybe tapering off? Or is it kind of jagged? You know, how much continuity is there between those spots? These are questions you have to really sort out when you're performing. How are you going to acknowledge arrival? Do you wait and present it? You know what I mean? Hold up the tempo a little bit, hold it back, and then go into it. You can do lots of things dynamically and with tempo to reflect these moments. Then you have a real progression getting us to the dominant in 24. Now that should be more intense than a lot of other stuff, right? Because that's the real harmonic activity. Let's see, do they push the tempo there? Do they hold it back and make you want it? There are all sorts of things you can do. There are no dynamics, so this is completely your call as a performer. What are they going to do with that? Then they land on that dominant, and it's just inherently tense. So do you play with it and let it be tense and not loud and intense, but scary and intense because it's kind of quiet and you don't know where it's going to go. Who knows? What are they going to do? Let's see what they do with that. And then the final one, but then do they keep the activity going until scale degree 1 and the melody comes in? Let's listen and just see how, hey, time me out here, that's not right.
I think it's interesting that even if you didn't add any expression, even if you didn't play rubato or add dynamics or anything, there's this tension there just
That's
created.
true. It's built in, isn't it? Okay, so we had a little work slowdown going on here. Thanks a lot, computer. Sounds like a union job here. Okay, let's see. Okay, we got a couple recordings here. What is this? I don't know who this is even, because I can't read it on here.
Oh,
That's a cool version.
Okay, I better start it over. Don't judge my musical taste. Notice about the performance that you liked or didn't like, either way? Okay, pianists, talk to us a little bit here. Well, how many pianists do we have here? One pianist.
I don't know who's first.
What's that?
I said I sing before I play piano.
Mm-hmm. You probably did. So, what do you think?
I like Miss Virgin.
What did you like?
There's some chord change. I can feel the color change, like different chords.
Yeah, generally when it was diminished, what did this person do?
Yeah, very clear.
Clear dynamically? What did they do?
He's
No more
softened.
Softened.
He softened a lot, and then he really brought out a lot of the phases too.
Yes.
I love the fact that you could always feel like it was rolling forward.
Mhm.
Great.
It's nice not to have all these stops and starts, but to just keep. Now, did anyone hear a place where there was a moment where it did slow down?
Yeah, I wasn't looking at this.
Well,
one.
Kinda
Kinda came into the secondary
What did
dominant.
you were gonna say something, what did you hear?
Slow down some there. Major 15.
15? There were some other places where there was more of a slowdown. Did you feel any of those?
The end.
Before the end, that was pretty obvious. Did you hear another place though where it slowed?
24.
24, yeah. I haven't really listened to this recording before, but this has got to be John O'Connor, because this is the one I don't recognize. You know John O'Connor? He did all the Beethoven, the most recent complete Beethoven collection. Do you know?
Like Barrymore.
Famous task because he.
Ah.
Wait, not two ends. I think it's just like this, right? Is that right? Two ends? Famous pianist because he just, what, 2004 or so? He did the whole Beethoven sonatas. Do you know that? You know this recording? This is his recording here. Now, why do you think he slowed at 24?
The harmonic progression is dominant.
Mm-hmm. So he's slowing to acknowledge the beginning of the dominant harmony, which is then prolonged for quite a while. It's a pretty big arrival point. And so he lets that sort of settle there. Now, did you hear what he did once he got on the dominant? He grew, and then he came back. He got louder dynamically until measure 30, and then he started to pull back the dynamic level, softly, decrescendo through there. That was interesting. But you see the melody? It rises, the highest note of every bar. D in measure 24. E, F, stayed there. F sharp, G, back to F in 30. And here's where he starts to get quieter. And then the F again, E. So it rises and then it falls a little bit. And he responded to the shape of the melody there with his dynamics. That's neat. So he gets quieter and slows a little bit on the dominant when it first starts, and it gives him room to do something inside that dominant, build within it. Go to the chordal seventh and then resolve it. The F being the chordal seventh here.
But we can call this one dynamic or just melodic line.
Well, the melody line is what goes up and down. John O'Connor is not Bach, but John O'Connor is the one who made it get louder and then get softer.
So we can call this one climax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he created a climax in measure 30. And then resolution. Yeah, and there are a lot of little subtle things, but I think you're right. The main thing is he just keeps that activity going, and only does any nuances with the significant nuances with the tempo till after the tonic prolongation has already happened. And so he saves it for the end once the progression really starts to move. Good. Okay, so let's call it a day. I know we just ran over by listening to that, but I think it's really worth it to say, okay now, once you've done all this, what do you get out of it? Well, you get a sense of the whole. You're getting a snapshot of the piece as one big organism instead of little bite-sized pieces, which is what Roman numeral analysis tends to do, because you little items. You've identified all these things, but this helps us relate things to one another and hear the kinds of motion and then respond to them in performance. Shape the music in a compelling way, which is very valuable. All right. Go to, no.